You know, I'm going to give you a history lesson.
We got some dumbass motherfuckers floating around this country.
Stop laughing! And when I do, start.
Also, y'all did some nasty-ass jokes on my ass, too.
Funny jokes and unfunny jokes come out of the same birth.
You f***ing guys are unbelievable.
Why are you laughing?
Evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Why You Laughing, a history of comedy podcast. And today, I am pleased to introduce to you the top 10 comedy specials of 2024. It's the time of year where we talk about very recent history, really more current events than anything else, where we review the best specials of the year, at least in my opinion. So get off my ass if you don't agree with the list. And, you know, we stick to our yearly tradition of honoring basically all white men, all straight whites on this list, although there may be an exception. So stay tuned when we get towards the top. There may be a rare treat of wokeness for you guys. Not really, but kind of.
There might be.
Yeah. We that's what we do every year here, where we talk about the specials that I enjoyed. It's self-indulgent, really. Has nothing to do with history, but I hope it turns you guys on to specials you may not have known about. We're in kind of a downtrend, I feel. I wasn't that excited about this year's list. Last year, you could see a lot of my favorite, a lot of comics that I really love and follow on the list. This year, not as much. Maybe more, I guess, up-and-comers in some sense, guys maybe you haven't necessarily heard of before. I think that happens when people are releasing specials every 18 months, where we just hit a year where we're in a down cycle. It's like cryptocurrency, you know? We're in a bear market right now.
There's 250 comedy assassins, though. Don't forget.
I've heard that number, yeah. I can't think of where, but... let me know what you guys think. If I missed any, make sure you leave them in the comments, and I'll check them out. Also, one note is we're recording this before Christmas Eve. Netflix always screws us by having some good special coming out around Christmas. Nate Bargatze's is out, and that'll probably be pretty good, I imagine. I feel like that would probably make this list. So
It'd probably be top 5 for sure.
I would think, yeah. So make sure you check that out with your family on Christmas Eve. But also, more importantly, go to blindmike.net. You know, if you're doing some last-minute Christmas shopping, gang, I think Patreon and YouTube have features where you can buy memberships for people.
Yes.
And I think it'd be hilarious if you bought everyone in your family a Blind Mike Project membership.
Please
Patreon or YouTube.
Please record them opening it confused.
What the hell is this?
That would be great.
You spent $5 on me for Christmas? But yeah, you can consider doing that, or just become a member yourself if you want early access and bonus content. We appreciate you guys subscribing, or just subscribe for free wherever you get podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, like, subscribe, comment. All that helps new people find the podcast. And share this episode. If you know people that are looking for good comedy specials to watch, and you think I'm on to something with my selections, then make sure you subscribe. And I forgot to tell Craig this before the show. A little production note: timestamp each one so people can skip around if they want.
Already on it.
Beautiful. What a pro. Okay.
I remember this from last year.
That's right. Very good. All right. So let's get into the list, shall we? We'll start with Actually, no. Let me do a couple honorable mentions that I always do. There were a couple that I almost put at number 10. Ryan Long, Problem Solved. I like Ryan Long a lot. But I thought this special was about the same, or maybe a downgrade from his last one, so I didn't include it. And Gary Veter had a very good special as well. Both of these are on YouTube. Check Gary Veter and Ryan Long out. Gary Veter's is very like it's almost old timey, and it's a lot of like my wife, I'll tell you, kind of stuff, which is actually nice because something becomes like so overdone. Like the 80s and 90s, it was all like my wife is a real pain in the ass. That like people stopped doing it. So Gary Veter was almost like a nice change of pace. Instead of an hour of you believe these trans people? You know, it was a nice throwback to older comedy. So I like both those guys. So consider checking them out. I almost put them at number 10, but instead we have number 10, Sam Morrill, You've Changed, the only special from an outlet other than Netflix or YouTube. This one's on Amazon. Amazon's usually good for one a year that I enjoy. It was Nate Bargatze a couple years ago. This year it was Sam Morrill. And I saw people, when I reviewed this special on Patreon, which you can also, on our Patreon, you can also get my reviews throughout the year. When I reviewed this special, people were like, I didn't love it. People were kind of ripping on this one. But I think you're grading Sam Morrill against himself, almost. I know I literally just did that with Ryan Long, but it's my list. Who cares? I don't think it's Sam Morrill's best special, but I think if you put this up against a lot of what was out there this year, I do think it's in the upper echelon. I think it was classic Morrill. He's wearing a suit, which I kind of like. He did it at the Wilbur. Suit, no tie. I feel like that fits Sam Morrill. Some guys, when they go to the suit, you feel like they're trying to pull something over on you.
Like Louis?
Yeah, a little bit. But suit, no tie, I feel like is a more casual look. But let's hear a little of Sam Morrill's Amazon special.
Single sex is more thrilling, but it lacks a nutritional value. Relationship sex is boring, but it's healthier. It's like a piece of grilled salmon, relationship sex. No one's jazzed to eat salmon, but you finish it and you're like, pretty good. Single sex is Panda Express. You walk in like, this is going to be excellent. The second it's over, I'm like, I think I'm going to commit suicide. I think I'm a deeply unhappy man, and tonight's the night I end it all.
Like, it's the sort of misdirect setup punch. Like, Morrill and Normand are kind of from the school of, like, a Mitch Hedberg, but they've also added to that by getting a little more personal, telling stories, that kind of thing. So I like Sam Morrill's special a lot. I do think he is in danger of becoming like too formulaic. I think the same thing with Mark Normand, where there's another guy on this list that I think fits this category as well, where once your special has such a format where you do kind of the setup punch stuff and then you have two stories at the end the way Morrill does, when it's so formulated, formulaic? What's the right word I'm looking for there? Formulaic. Let's go with
Structured?
That. Sure, yes. When it's so structured, you can almost like predict how it's going to go. I do think that can be kind of a dangerous place for a comedian. But like I said, I thought this one was still very funny. Not as good as I Got This, Sam's best special in my opinion, but I thought it was still up there, and that's why it made the list at number 10. Moving on. I'm going to see if I can remember all these. Moving on to number 9. It's a Netflix special by a Southern gentleman. Am I right?
Long hair?
Number 9, Dusty Slay, Working Man, on Netflix. And for some real inside baseball, some people say Dusty Slay looks like the warthog with long hair. Do you see that at all?
Kinda, I guess.
That's for 4 of you out there. You'll enjoy that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dusty Slay, a guy he's on the Nateland podcast. He's clean, but I think of him in the Nateland world the way I think of like Ron White in the blue collar world. Not a perfect comparison because obviously Nate's a great comedian. I think much better than Jeff Foxworthy or certainly Bill Engvall, which we've talked about this year. Uh-huh. But in the sense that Dusty Slay is a little dirtier. Dirtier's probably too far. But, you know, he'll talk about drugs and stuff like that. So when compared to Nate, he's technically dirty, I guess. But, like, he doesn't curse on stage, but he is willing to get into topics that someone like Bargatze or Jim Gaffigan may not get into, which is why I think Working Man is a good title. Dusty grew up in a trailer park, maybe a little more relatable to the common man than some of these other guys. But I liked Dusty Slay a lot. Let's hear a little of his special, which Netflix will probably take us down for.
I never camped growing up because I lived in a trailer. And we always felt like we had a pretty good idea of what camping was all about, you know what I mean? We're like, nah, we already kind of live in a camper. You don't really need to take it down to a tent. Like, we know what it's like to be poor. We're not trying to find out what it means to be homeless, you know? Not trying to practice homelessness out here. People do think I'm homeless sometimes. It happened more times than you would believe. But one time I was in Austin, Texas, you know, and I was sitting out. All right, and I was sitting outside. You know, I was dressed like this. You know, I was show ready, and I was sitting out on a park bench, and I'm looking down, and I heard someone say, "Excuse me." And I look up, and there's a little girl standing there with a brown paper sack in her hand, and she said, "Do you want a sandwich?" It was very sweet, and I did want a sandwich. So it worked out. My stomach was full, but my soul was empty. You know what I mean?
Dusty Slay does feel like a throwback. It feels like a Comedy Central special you would have seen in like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, you're like, who's this guy?
Yeah, where like, I don't think he's necessarily appealing to anyone. I guess the idea would be like he's trying to appeal to rednecks. But like he has a very casual, matter-of-fact way of talking that I really like. Like I like him on Nate's podcast, which is why I checked this out. And I think it really held up. And like I said, you can watch it with your family or your girlfriend. It's a good one to introduce someone that might not be into the comics higher up on this list, or be like, it might be a little jarring for them to start with some of these other people. So Dusty Slay is a good, if you're trying to ease someone into stand-up, Dusty Slay is a good place to start. And I thought Working Man was a very good sort of debut to the world. I think that did like bump him up a level where he's now playing theaters and stuff like that. So check out Dusty Slay if you haven't already.
You sound like Theo Vaughn.
Yeah, I feel like you're going to say that about any Southerner now, though, you know?
Well, it was even like the cadence, kind of.
A little bit. And there's a little Theo Vaughn in him where, like, he's kind of a conspiracy theorist, but not in an aggressive way, you know? Like, he just believes that the government is out to get you, and he doesn't really care too much about it, you know? When comedy's done, he'll disappear into the woods or something, and we won't hear from him again. But I kind of like that. We miss that in society, where now if you believe in conspiracies, you have to talk about them all the time. Dusty Slay keeps him to himself.
That's right.
All right, let's move on to number 8, which is my good friend. I've interviewed this man before. Greg Stone. Nobody presents Greg Stone on YouTube, which Craig said before the show. Great title.
Great title.
Tells you exactly who the guy is, where this is a debut special. He couldn't find anyone to back it or sell it or produce it for him. So this was self-funded by Greg Stone. And I think Greg Stone, a little like Dusty Slay in a very different way, but it's very silly, very palatable. Like, Greg Stone is a goofball. He feels like a guy, another throwback in the sense that, like, he feels like a guy that would have been a good, like, sitcom dad in the 90s, but not in the obvious way, you know?
Yeah.
Like, he feels like he has an older feel to him, where he talks about marriage and kids and being a dad and struggling financially and all that kind of stuff, but it isn't in the obvious, according to Jim kind of a way. So I like Greg Stone a lot. I think he's very goofy and weird. Nothing's too serious. If I had one criticism of the special, and I think even this material is very good, but there is a religious chunk where I think people are getting into now, like, people that are still criticizing religion are doing it in a way where, like, you believe I'm criticizing Christianity or Catholicism? It's like, yeah, we've been doing that for 20 years now. It's not that crazy, you know?
It's more alarming when people are like, I'm religious.
Gang, this Bible, I don't think we should be taking this literally. It's like, yeah, no, we know. We got it. So that would be my only, like, mild criticism of this, but I found it enjoyable all the way through. Let's hear a little of Greg Stone.
Anyway, I didn't want to deal with this. I didn't want to deal with mosquitoes ever again, so I was like, let me Google it. Let me find everything I can. I found this out. I didn't know. Mosquito lifespan. It's only 10 days. Bothered us for 8. All I had to do was wait them out 2 more days. Then I really thought, I was like, man, that mosquito bothered my wife and I for a week and a day. But for that mosquito, I was hunting him his whole life. He made a mistake as a child and then just lived a life on the run. All he knew was just me, this immortal beast, trying to hunt him. I never got older. I never got tired. I honestly think when he landed on that phone, he was just like, I'm tired of running. I can't live my life like this anymore.
Like that feels very like Regan or Gaffigan. Like he has the spirit of those guys, but he is a little darker. Like he'll talk about, like I said, religion, or like he'll talk about slightly darker topics than maybe the cleaner guys that he was influenced by would. But I loved the special all the way throughout, and I'm surprised Greg isn't more popular. Like I think he's great on podcast. I think he's very goofy and weird and unique. So check out Greg Stone, whether it's on podcasts or his special Nobody Presents on YouTube. I'm a big Greg Stone fan and think more people should be checking out what he's doing.
Absolutely. You want?
I forget that I have to do this.
Yeah, I'm like,
usually I have you do it. All right, number 7.
I was like, do you want me to say it?
Number 7 is, I believe. Damn it, I'm forgetting. Go ahead. Who's number 7?
Brendan Sagelow.
Oh, Brendan Sagelow, Thin Lips, also on YouTube. Brendan's a guy. I think he's around my age. He's a younger comic. He's been. You don't necessarily think of him as younger because he's been in the New York scene for a long time, and you see him pop up on podcasts and stuff. And Brendan's a guy, because he's on all these podcasts, I think he suffers from what I call Rich Voss disease, where he gets made fun of so much on a lot of these podcasts that it mislabels him as like a bad comic. You know what I mean? Like he's the punching bag on a lot of this stuff. So I think audiences sometimes think like, I bet his comedy fucking sucks too. And then you check out his YouTube special and you're like, oh wow, this is like very good. Like I was surprised how much I enjoyed Brendan's comedy special. I like his podcast a lot as well. It's relatively new. I don't love the title, but I think if you know Brendan, it fits him. Sag Daddy the Pod. He's had like Joe List and Ari Shaffir and guys like that on. I would say check those episodes out. I like Brendan. He does rap and he's good. If you get through things like this is what I'm talking about, where he can be a punching bag on podcasts. It's easy to assume he's not a great comic, but he actually, he's another guy. He has a very, like, remember when Kevin James was good at comedy?
Yes.
Like Kevin James had a good, I think it was Comedy Central Presents, or I don't know if it was a full special that ran on Comedy Central all the time back in the day.
Oh yeah, I remember being a little kid and thinking the bit where he got like popcorn stuck in his throat was the funniest thing I've ever seen.
Yes, or I like when he was going through the bank line and it was a long journey to get there.
Yeah,
like for kids, that early Kevin James stuff was great. Brendan Sagelow, his energy reminded me a lot of that, where he's goofy and silly. There's a little Chris Farley in his energy as well, where there's like a darkness to what he's saying, but you don't feel it, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can tell like this guy is on a thread of depression. Like he could snap at any minute, but it's not bursting out at you, you know?
Yeah.
And he's like very relatable in the same way that I think like Bo Burnham is relatable, but for very different reasons. Like I think Brendan does appeal to a generation of people that have anxiety and self-loathing in a totally different way than Bo Burnham does. So let's hear a little bit of Thin Lips on YouTube.
Don't feel safe with transgender women in our public bathrooms. Doesn't that make you... Has anybody here been in a public bathroom and felt safe? You're walking into a public bathroom. Oh, safety, safe. I'm so safe. This guy's sleeping. That's how safe he feels. What's this say? Call John for a good time. He must be the sheriff. We are safe. We are safe. We have the sheriff's number right here. And not for nothing, if you do feel so unsafe in a public bathroom, don't you want a muscular woman in there? Don't you want a big woman who could tuck her balls behind her back and be like, go piss, I'll watch the door. You go piss. Anybody comes in here, I'll fuck them in the ass.
Big laugh.
He has a great energy about him that I really like. And what's funny, and I think kind of adds to his charm, is that like he didn't do a great job promoting this special. It doesn't have a ton of views. I think he just like kind of released it in the middle of the night. And I just popped like, oh, all right, let's watch that. I'll watch 5 minutes of this. And then I got hooked into it. I was like, oh, this is actually way better than I expected. He also had a joke. I looked for this it was not in the special. I was like, because I thought I kind of remembered it, but it wasn't in the special. It was just a joke he posted on Instagram recently, where he goes, there had to be a couple fighting on the Titanic, and I think that's really fun to think about. Like, he goes like, just some lady like, the boat's going down, Frank. Then why is the band playing, Janice? I thought that was very funny. So I love Sagelow's energy. I find him very relatable. So if you're like me, go check out Thin Lips on YouTube. All right, moving on to number 6, which I believe is Chad Daniels.
That's right.
Chad Daniels, Empty Nester on YouTube. Chad Daniels might be like the most underrated guy in comedy. I think he has a few great albums and specials. I discovered him the same time I found like Tom Segura, John Mulaney, and Hannibal Buress when I just searched like Louis C.K. Pandora like a decade ago and just listened to whatever comics they threw on there. Chad Daniels was on there a lot. And those other names that I mentioned blew up. Chad Daniels is just like, he's a guy that keeps to himself. He lives in Minnesota. He rarely does podcasts. He did a run this year to promote this special, but he's not out there on a ton of shit. He dates and does a podcast with Kelsey Cook, who I've mentioned in past years. She's also a great comic. But I think Chad Daniels is very underrated. So I would say start with Chad's older stuff. I don't even know that this is his best special or album, but Empty Nester I thought was very good. He's a guy that does a lot of family material, and now his kids are out of the house, which is a lot of what this special is about. So let's hear a little from Empty Nester on Netflix.
I think you only have to be better than your dad to be a good dad. And that is a rule I made up to make myself feel better. Do any men in here have a bad dad growing up? Okay. Twins cap, how come your dad was bad? Had nothing to do with you? Do you have kids? Yes. Do you have anything to do with them? Everything. You're a fucking better dad? Easy. Good for you. Good dad alert. Good dad alert. My dad stole my identity and ruined my credit before I was out of high school. That's all. So all I had to do to be better than him was not learn my son's social security number. And hate to brag, but I did it. I took some shit. I brought him to camp once, and this woman was like, "You don't know your son's social security number?" And I was like, "I'm a great father." I didn't know he had stolen my identity and ruined my credit until I went to get my first car loan, and the man just laughed in my face. And he goes, "I can't give you money. You owe a woman named Karen Ward $15,000 in child support." And I was like, "Well, that's crazy because that's my mom." Right, I mean, I know she said we had to start helping out around the house, but $15,000?
No shot. I remember my kid's social security number.
That's good. You're a good dad.
Yeah,
Chet, he's got a little like Louis in him where he's just talks about like the honesty of being a parent. Like his kids became, particularly his son, became like a character in his stand-up that he basically makes out to be a fucking moron, which is very funny. I feel like that's something that, like I said, is kind of gone. It was a massive thing in stand-up for a long time, just talking about parenting to the point where it went away. And now you have a guy like Chad Daniels who does it masterfully. That is kind of refreshing. And he has a very, again, a matter-of-fact way of speaking that eventually hits you. Like it feels like it's kind of just traditional setup punch, and then he throws very personal stuff like "my father stole my identity and ruined my life" in there. He just mixes that in. So I like Chad Daniels a lot. I think there's a darkness to him that you don't see in a lot of guys that have similar styles to him, if that makes sense. So check out Chad Daniels. And like I said, if you don't know Chad Daniels, he's not the most, household name of these guys by any means, but I think he should be. I think he should be a lot bigger. I think of him in the same category that I think of Gary Gulman, where these guys are what should be legends, but you don't hear their name nearly as much as you should. So check out Chad Daniels' older stuff and Empty Nester on Netflix. He's put out a couple specials in recent years, so you've got plenty to pick through. Number 5, I believe, is one of my all-time favorites. Am I correct in saying that?
No.
No,
is the one I saw.
Oh, okay. All right. Number 5, I do think is a great special.
I was just like, I hope not.
It's a great special, and it's been clouded with this guy's dickhead personality that's coming out for some reason. But it is Bones and All on Netflix by the legendary Anthony Jeselnik. I do love Anthony Jeselnik. And as far as stand-up goes, he is, I mean, one of my all-time. He's not in my top 10 probably, but he's not that far away. I think Anthony Jeselnik is a great comic. I think if you've watched the Blind Mike Project in recent weeks, he's going out of his way to try and ruin that and make you hate him. But I think this is a huge testament to Anthony's stand-up, is that he was going on podcasts and really annoying me for weeks. And I've talked about it for hours on end on the Blind Mike Project. So for weeks, he's just irking me and twisting the knife. And yet I still put on this special, and I was like, this is really good. I think there's a lot of brilliant jokes. Now, I mentioned this with Sam Morrill. The problem with Anthony's formula is that we're now, 4 or 5 specials in, whatever he's done. We know the magic trick. He's setting you up, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be that dark, but he's going to get you in the end. He's actually going to be a villain in this joke. It's crazy, Actually, you see it going one way, you didn't see it going towards baby murder. It's pretty wild.
That's right.
But I think it actually speaks to Anthony's brilliance that he does that formula. That's exactly what he's doing, and yet you still can't guess the punchline. You know what I mean? It's never the obvious. Like, you're trying to think of the darkest, most twisted misdirection you can think of, and you still aren't guessing the punchline. Like this joke that he used to promote it that I think is very good.
One of my friends just asked me if I would be the sperm donor for her baby. I said, I don't know. That's a pretty big decision. How old's your baby?
It's very funny. And I think there's a lot of jokes like that. But because of Anthony's formula, I do think there's some jokes that fall a little flat. And I think Anthony's getting to a point in his career, if you watch him on these podcasts that he's doing. I think Jimmy Carr is a great comic. One thing I hate that Jimmy Carr does is go, well, if that bothered you, this is really going to upset you.
Oh, my God. Yeah.
And then it's a joke you heard on Reddit 10 years ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Preparing us for how outrageous you are, you better deliver every time because you're setting yourself up for failure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like telling me how great a movie or a TV show is. It better be pretty fucking good because now I'm expecting The Godfather.
Right.
So that I do think gets in the way a little bit. And I think Anthony is playing a character on stage, or so I thought, of a really arrogant guy who doesn't give a fuck what you think. And then when you see that character on podcasts not doing jokes, I think it takes away from the character a little bit. But like I said, I think it's a testament to Anthony's ability that I thought all of these things, and I was like, why is he doing this on podcasts? It's really annoying.
Please stop.
And then I had those thoughts in my head, and I still watched this, and I was like, this is a great special. I don't think it's his best, but I thought it was very good.
I will say he did the "Why Are You Laughing" formula.
What's that?
He put a Norm story at the end.
You know what? That might be how he got me. He put a Norm story at the end. I do think I've heard him tell that Norm story before, which is
I loved it.
But it was it's a great Norm story. I think he should have ended with that. I thought the closer was a little weak to follow that Norm story.
It was a very strange transition to that.
Yeah. And it was kind of, again, it was like you guys don't think I'm going to end this as the edgiest motherfucker? Okay, he did a joke about Molly. It's not that crazy.
I thought the Norm story was good. The Kanye story was good. And the roast when he kind of told the behind the scenes a little
Yeah,
bit.
that's interesting. And honestly, his Rogan joke was good.
Yes.
Like he went on all these podcasts trashing Rogan and Tony Hinchcliffe and all these guys. If he just let it speak through that joke, he would have gotten his message across. It would have been very funny. And we would have been like, hey, Anthony Jeselnik called out Rogan in a comedic way and then moved on instead of going on Mark Maron and bitching about it. But I thought the special was very good.
I hate Donald Trump, and here's why. Joe Rogan.
Yeah. So Bones and All on Netflix. I think it's very good. Again, not Anthony's best, but in a year like this, I do think it was definitely worthy of being in the top 5. You might be able to argue it should be higher, but it was 5th for me. Maybe my judgment was clouded. Maybe Anthony fell a few spots because of his podcasting, but I do think it was very good.
Next is the one you thought it was.
Now we're getting to an all-time legend. Good. I'm glad I had CQ above Anthony Jeselnik. Number 4, Colin Quinn, Our Time Is Up. Great title. Great idea. He recorded this. Colin Quinn, I think, is the only guy that could pull this off. I'm trying to think of who second on the list would be. Maybe Louis could do something like this. I'm trying to think of other names, but Colin Quinn recorded this at a symposium of psychologists and therapists.
Well, he was on Tough Crowd. They were, I forget who said it, but they were basically like, "You're like the cool substitute teacher."
It was Joe DeRosa at the roast of Rich Voss.
Oh, is that what it was?
He said, Colin Quinn is the teacher that's trying to make learning fun.
Yeah. And so this is perfect for him.
Yeah, I think it fit his style very well. I can't think of anyone else that would have pulled this off. And it's about how social media is killing all of us and the news. It's very of the time without being preachy. And I think Colin Quinn has that ability. I've said this before about Colin, where the way we play George Carlin clips now from 20, 30 years ago, and both sides are like, see, he agrees with us, which just proves he didn't agree with either of you. He had a mind that was outside of your capacity. I think Colin Quinn has that ability, but is also like funnier than Carlin was in later years.
Absolutely.
So that's why I think Colin Quinn is one of my all-time favorites, an underappreciated legend, and I think he had one of the best specials of the year. Let's hear a little bit of it. This is on YouTube, by the way.
I do feel like as a country we're in a meltdown, free fall. Nobody's in charge, so everybody's in charge. We're in a psych ward. You guys may not have noticed because of the phone. Everybody walks around all day arguing with people that aren't there. We think the government's listening to us at all times. We think everybody else is a psyop or a plant. We walk outside in pajamas during the daytime. We take medication on a regular basis over the course of the day. We play games and puzzles to keep ourselves from going crazy. We have delusions of grandeur. Everybody walks around because of the phone. People walk around all day. I condemn all... Okay, you're not the Archbishop of Canterbury. You don't get to condemn. I call on all, okay, you're in a gas station toilet. I don't know how much leverage you're...
What's funny, too, is about Colin is, like, he's so brilliant. Like, how many comics would have used the Archbishop of Canterbury as the reference there?
0.
Like, he's a brilliant guy, but he's so unpolished that his delivery is a guy from Brooklyn, like who he is. So you're not expecting the genius material that's coming out of him. I think that's helped and hurt him in some ways. Like, I do think like his mumbling and meandering towards a punchline is why he doesn't have the same mass appeal as guys who are frankly not as good as him.
Yeah.
But it's what makes him the comics comic. And as Colin always says, it just means I'm unsuccessful. but I think Colin is brilliant. I think Our Time Is Up is great. He put out another special. This is how prolific Colin is. He put another special out like 2 months ago about the election. Stamps and Tea, it's called. I didn't think that one was nearly as good, probably because it's so topical.
Yeah.
He put it out like a week before the election. But I thought Our Time Is Up will hold up for a long time. His ability, like you heard there, his analogies for society are fantastic. Like, he also talks about what each social media platform is in relationship to, like, patrons at a bar. And when he breaks that down, it's so brilliant and it's right there in front of you. Like, how did we not see that? But he does it in such a genius way. Colin Quinn, one of my all-time favorites, probably in my top 5 all-time. And I just love Colin, so I'm glad well into his 60s, he's able to put out material like that, which is also pretty impressive.
And you love him so much, you forgot we cut 2 clips.
Yes, I did. Let's hear a little more CQ.
Corporations talk like therapists now. In the old days, corporations, you knew where you stood with them because they had to tell they were themselves at least. You know, they'd be like, I remember the commercial I was growing up, it was like, we're Mobil Oil and don't you dare forget it. You're like, okay. Now they come out, it's like, we here at DuPont Chemical are actively engaged in trying to amplify voices that have traditionally been marginalized. And with that, we formed an ongoing partnership with Young Thug. We think best exemplifies that we believe Black Lives Matter. And some of our best friends are black. Ask Young Thug, he'll tell you all about it.
I think what's another thing that's impressive about Colin is, like, I mean, if you watch Tough Crowd or hear, like, Red State, Blue State is another great special. Like, I think he definitely leans right.
Definitely.
But that does not affect his comedy at all.
No.
Where you're not watching this like it's a MAGA guy, it's a Trump supporter, or anything like that. Like, he has his political beliefs, but it doesn't really skew his comedy, which is obviously hard to do because it affects so many other people.
Yeah.
But that's what makes, I think, Colin stand out with, like, all this stuff. Red State, Blue State is another one, talking about how prolific Colin is. Someone messaged me earlier in the year, and they were like, you got to check out Colin's new special. And I said, I actually just did a review of it on Patreon. And they said, no, he put out another one, Red State, Blue State. And I'm like, oh, he just uploaded that to YouTube, but it was on CNN a few years ago.
Right.
Colin Quinn is a guy that had a comedy special on CNN, and it was actually good.
It's very fun.
But yeah, I think he's truly a genius, should be appreciated more. So go check out Our Time Is Up on YouTube. All right. Number 3.
Also a 2-parter.
Oh, yeah, of course. This, I think, bumped this guy up a level for me. Like, I've always really enjoyed him on podcasts, and I've always thought his stand-up was good. I thought this one really stood out as opposed to his other stand-up, and that is Dan Soder on the Road, also on YouTube. I thought this was Dan's best work. I think he has captured something for a kid that was raised by a single mother. Like, Dan's dad died. He talks a lot about that in a couple of his specials. Yeah, shout out to Gary. Like, Dan has really, I think, cornered the market for kids that grew up in the 90s, like single, overworked moms, aren't necessarily that close with their dad. It's a big group in America. And I think Dan has the best material and most relatable material as far as anyone I've ever heard on that subject. And I think that's a lot of what this special was. And he also just has, like, good kind of stoner material. It's like he talks about subjects like not having a dad, but he doesn't do it in a one-man show kind of a way where you feel bad for his trauma or anything. It's very, again, goofy and silly. So I loved Soder's special. We have a couple clips. Let's hear one of them, shall we?
You know, I get, like, scared by technology because we were the first, you know, if you're near the age of 40, we were the first generation to have the internet. Remember how mean we were to our parents? Remember that? They'd be like, I sent an electronic mail. You're like, it's email, you dumb bitch. And then now there's shit coming out that scares me. I was like, oh, what? It's AI? I was like, so the Pope wasn't wearing a puffy white jacket? I don't have TikTok on my phone. I don't have it. My fiance has it on her phone, and she shows it to me like I'm her grandpa. She really does. She shows me TikToks, and I'm like, oh! And those dogs are friends? Oh, I like this one.
Also, I love, like, Soder's a great voice guy, which is not a big part of his comedy, but it does enhance it when he peppers it in.
Yeah.
Like you heard right there. But I think Soder is like a big kid that did a lot of his growing up in his 30s, which I think is representative of a lot of people of his generation, which makes him extremely relatable. And I thought this was such an upgrade from his past specials and the stand-up that he's put out there. It's evidently the reason he left the bonfire, he said, was to work more on his stand-up, build his YouTube channel, and get more of a following for stand-up as opposed to podcasts. And I think On the Road definitely did that. YouTube is not the breakout, it doesn't have the breakout algorithm that it had a few years ago for guys like Mark Norman, Sam Morrill, obviously Shane Gillis, probably the biggest, that put out a YouTube special and it exploded. That doesn't really happen on YouTube as much now.
No.
But a couple guys that were able to kind of escape that. I think Dan Soder is one of them, where it's like we're past the YouTube craze, but this special did manage to reach a lot of people. I think it's over 1 million views. So shout out to On the Road by Dan Soder. Check it out. I think we have one more clip, you said?
That's right.
Well, let's hear it, shall we?
Do you know there's levels of dead dad? I didn't know that. Like degrees of a black belt. Like when my dad was alive, he wasn't around, so I was always jealous of kids whose dads were around. Then my dad died. Then I got jealous of kids with better dead dads. Dude, I've lived in New York the last 13 years. I have multiple friends whose dads died saving people in 9/11. Top shelf dead dad. That is premium American hero dead dad. My dad died drinking next to a lake. He relaxed to death. Bottom shelf dead dad. Dude, my friends' dads probably said something heroic, you know? They're like, we need to save those people. My dad's last words were like, I like mine with ladies at the
Like, he talks a lot about his relationship with his dad and his dad not being there and dying and being an alcoholic and all of that. It obviously greatly affected him because it's also a big thing that he talks about on pod. Like, he brings it up fairly often, but there's never a moment of, like, it's something that psychologically impacted him so greatly. And there's never a moment of like, but let's get real for a second. Here's the thing about losing your father at a young age. You know,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
always that energy where it's very funny, very relatable. You totally get what he's talking about. You can tell it clearly affected him, but he keeps it light and fun and funny.
Inspired by Dave Attell's road work, perhaps?
Why do you say that?
Because it had clips from different shows and it was almost the same title.
Oh, probably. I know he loves Attell, so that's very possible. I hadn't thought of that. You might be right.
That was I think it. I don't know. No, it wasn't Attell's last special. He had that other weird record.
Well, he had one come out earlier this year, maybe.
Yeah,
I think it was earlier this year. I think, I thought Attell had some great material. It was only like 35 minutes, so I didn't really count that.
Yeah, and then the special before that was that roadwork one. That was like 12 years ago.
Yeah,
if not more. And like I saw Attell several years after that came out. He was still doing it.
That's surprising to me because he has so much material that he mixes in. So I'm surprised by that.
I mean, it had mixed in with new stuff, but I'm also like, I heard that, man. Come on.
I don't know how this turned into bashing Dave Attell for some reason, but go check out Dan Soder On the Road.
Still has my favorite special of all time. I feel like I can go there sometimes, you know.
Very brave.
Thank you.
All right. We are in the top 2 now.
That's right.
And I think both these specials for these comics you can consider like actual specials. I mean, the last couple are definitely worthy of being released, obviously, but I'm talking like tone setting for their career where they have now a body of work that you can look to and be like, oh, these are not just real comics, but like these are upper echelon comics in that 250 that Craig was referencing earlier. So number 2, and this one I struggled over. I almost put it at number 1. I loved the material in this one. Number 2 is Mike Racine, I'm Normal, also on YouTube. Racine's another guy that I've heard on podcasts forever. I've seen him open a couple times for Dan Soder, among other comics. And his material, we were just talking about Dave Attell. You want to talk about someone who's like Dave Attell in style, but talking about like real stuff is Mike Racine. Like very influenced by a guy like Attell, where you're never expecting him to go the places he's going, but the topics are more like serious in nature. So kind of a mix of like Attell and I'm trying to think of another good example, but maybe like a mix of Attell and Jim Norton a little bit. Like he has kind of both of their energy, but I love Mike Racine. He's a guy that you aren't really able to guess where he's going when he brings up a subject. Like a lot of the subjects in this, you might be like, oh, I've heard 10,000 hours on this topic. And then you're like, oh shit, I didn't see it going this direction. So let's hear a little Mike Racine.
Just think fucking a corpse should be a crime.
All right, see, right, hold on. Like, just for his mind to go there, for that to be a topic in this special. Very Attell, like, weirdness, you know?
Definitely.
Just think fucking a corpse should be a crime. I don't know if I do. My father-in-law is getting very old, and somebody called me and they were like, "Hey, this is the morgue. Are you sitting down? Someone took your father-in-law's corpse and they fucked it." I'd be like, "Why did you tell me that?" Could have just not called me and said anything. And don't you feel like if you were working at a morgue and somebody was doing that, you'd just be like, "Hey, get out of here." Hey, scram, do this 2 more times, I'm going to tell your parents.
He has definitely some Louis influence as well, where like he's talking about a subject like it's a very casual thing that people are always discussing. Like if you just heard the tone of that, if you heard the second half of that joke, you'd be like, oh, it's just an innocent joke about neighborhood kids that Mike has to deal with. And then when you hear the beginning, you're like, oh, it's about corpse fucking. I didn't see it be like a lot of people say I didn't see it going that direction. With Racine, sometimes you're like, I didn't see it starting there. He came to a wholesome punchline almost, but I didn't see it starting in that direction.
I do like the starting a joke that brash. You're like, oh, okay.
yeah. I think he has a very weird brain that I love. Like, there's a lot of Mike Racine jokes that are very unique to Mike Racine. Like, you can't really picture another comic broaching that topic. Never mind like having that joke. Like even to like again, corpse fucking, something like that. It's really only a handful of guys you would expect to have that kind of material, and I think a lot of guys, especially coming up now, like when you watch like Kill Tony or something like that, I'm sure there's a lot of guys that think like, I remember I watched Eric Andre's special. I think Eric Andre is funny, but I didn't even know he did stand up. Honestly,
I didn't either.
So I watched his Netflix special and I turned it off a few minutes in after this joke where he's like, you know how you're doing coke with your grandma? And I'm like, oh, it's just like edgy for edginess sake. Mike Racine talks about corpse fucking, where it seems like it could be in that direction, where it's like gotta be edgy, like he's a fucking edgelord, man. But then he turns it into like, hey, you get out of here, kids, you know?
Get off my porch.
Yeah, like I think to turn it into that is a very unique brain.
Are we ready for Mike's Netflix adaptation of his #1 on this list?
It seems like you disagree with this.
I haven't seen it. I'm just trying to be funny.
All right. Well, people do disagree with this. I got a real dressing down from Carl Hamburger last night, where he was very against me putting a woman in this spot. But I'm brave. I'm a hero. But genuinely, I maybe it's just like my sense of humor. This like really hit me. I wasn't expecting it going a lot of the places it went. I thought it was definitely the darkest special of the year. But to me, the #1 special of the year, one that really stood out to me above anyone else, was Adrienne Iapalucci's The Dark Queen on Netflix. It was produced by Ari Shaffir and directed by Louis C.K. So she had the big dogs helping her, which is probably how this got on Netflix. But Adrienne's been around for a while. I've heard people like Ari championing her forever. But I hadn't seen a ton of her stand up, and this to me, I viewed it as like what Anthony Jeselnik would want to be remembered for. Like, to me, it was as dark as a Jeselnik special. It had that tone to it, but there was a realness to it that Jeselnik lacks. Like, the people that Jeselnik is talking about don't exist. Whereas, legitimately, I heard Adrienne on Are You Garbage? And there's a bit in this special where she talks about her sister. And the way she's talking about her sister, you're like, oh, well, she has a relationship with this person. Obviously, these are jokes and they're not real. And when she was on Are You Garbage, she was like, yeah, my sister's probably never going to speak to me again when this comes out. Like, like, there is really personal dark shit in here. Which is why I think I liked it so much. Like I said, Louis directed it. I think there's clearly some Louis influence. I think you can see some Ari Shaffir in her too. And like I said, mixed with a little Jeselnik, where it's like that level of dark, but real. So let's hear a little Adrienne Iapalucci.
Somebody was at a concert the other day that fuck Putin sign. I was like, oh, do you think he got the message? Somebody knocked on his door. You're not going to like this. People at this Lizzo concert are pretty mad at you.
She has a feel like a real life Daria, kind of.
She looks like a real life Daria.
Yeah. So, like, very dark. She never smiles on stage. Like, she is that all the time. And it's not a character, I don't think, because she has that energy. Anytime I've heard her talk, she really is as dark as she presents. Well, we're playing clips that, like, I hope Netflix will allow us because they're on social media. But it gets much darker than the stuff we're playing. Like, a quote I always go back to is something that Eliza Schlesinger got a lot of shit for years ago, where she was like, I'm the only woman that does World War II jokes. And people were like, fuck you, Eliza. Like, oh, there's plenty of women that do that. I think Eliza's mistake was she is not a cerebral, edgy comedian.
I'm a trailblazer.
Yeah, like that's a perfect word. You don't watch Eliza Schlesinger and think, what a trailblazer. What a beacon, what a voice for the voiceless in comedy. She's really, really doing things no one else is doing. So I think that kind of caused the outrage. But there was truth in what she's saying, where a lot of women revert to their sexuality. Whether it's like, I'm gross or I'm hot, and guys want to fuck me, or whatever it is. It's a lot of like sex stuff or stuff in that vein. Adrienne, and there's a couple girls, right? Like Jordan Jensen's another one who we talked about last year. But Adrienne like really breaks that mold where she has jokes about Hamas, like she has a lot of subjects that women don't typically cover. So I don't know, maybe I'm grading on a curve and this is me going, hey, good for you. Hey, look at you. You're really trying, young lady. So maybe that's how she stole the number one spot from me. But genuinely, like when I watched this, I think it was the hardest I laughed of any of these specials that we're talking about. We have one more clip from her, right?
We sure do.
All right, let's hear it.
Parkland was a very upsetting shooting, because it happened on Ash Wednesday, which made it sadder because it just meant all those kids had targets on their heads. A lot of schools have safe spaces for words, not for bullets. Nah, even if you go into one of those schools as a shooter, they'll be like, hey, you could shoot the kids, but please don't call them retards. We don't want them triggered before they're murdered. That meat won't be as soft.
Jesus Christ. And maybe I made the correlation because he also has a Parkland joke, but that felt very Louis to me. Like that felt like a Louis joke, where it is extremely dark, but kind of presented in a way where you like feel guilty, but you're laughing at it,
Right.
So I think there's a lot of jokes like that in this special. I think Adrienne did a great job. And I was going to say, this is a sexist thing that I'm doing. I was going to say there aren't a lot of women that like are able to pull off that level of darkness while still being original and not like shocking for shocking's sake. But there aren't a lot of men like that right now either. Like she is kind of doing something that a lot of people aren't doing. And like I said, Anthony Jeselnik is kind of considered the king at that. To me, she's doing it better because it is personal and there is something at stake. Like the joke that Anthony made, yet again about molestation that we heard earlier, like there's really nothing at stake for Anthony making that joke because it's not a real scenario. Whereas Adrienne very easily could have gotten that pulled off Netflix or whatever. Like, if someone wanted to make a stink about that Parkland joke, which isn't nearly the darkest joke in the special, that could have, like, ruined her life. You know what I mean? Like, if people wanted to attack her for something like that, they could have. Lucky for her, I don't think this special got big enough for people to be outraged by it. But
I thought that was very funny, and I'm just so glad she's not doing the Amy Schumer thing where she'd be like, yeah, that means the kids had targets on their heads. And then just like sit there.
Right. No, she owns it. She completely, and like sits in it. Where I've heard her get like in interviews do like Patrice style, where she's almost like happy the crowd is walking out. But it's not like, good, I'm so offensive and you can't handle it. She's like, no, I get it. Like if you get up and leave in the middle of my show, I totally understand. I'm not trying to piss you off, but like I get why this isn't for you.
Understandable.
Yeah. So I loved it. Like I said, guys like Carl who don't respect women, they didn't care for it. So I'll be curious what you guys think. Am I white knighting for Adrienne Iapalucci? But I thought it was the best of the year. But I thought all of these were definitely worth a watch. So let me know. I particularly like to hear if I turned you guys onto a special that you weren't aware of and that you loved and you found because of this program. So let me know if there's anything like that. Sound off in the comments. Or let me know if I'm an idiot and I got everything wrong. But in particular, also let me know if there's something I missed. Because a lot of specials come out. At the beginning of the year, I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to watch every single one this year. And by mid-January, I was like, well, that's not feasible.
There's already 40 out.
I have a life, for God's sake. So let me know if there's something I missed in the comments, and maybe I'll watch it and talk about it. How's that sound? That's it. It went by very quickly. I'm sad to leave you guys for 2024, but who knows what 2025 will bring. So hopefully we're on a new cycle. Like I said, these weren't my favorite specials to come out in a long time, but they were definitely the best of this year. So who knows what we'll see next year. Maybe it'll be a whole new trend and a group of comics. But go to blindmike.net, support this program. I'm having a weird time introing and outroing this episode today. Have you noticed that?
I noticed the intro seemed fine.
I don't know why. At the end of the year, I've got senioritis.
I was gonna say
I'm ready to get out of here.
We're just sad it's over.
Yeah, I know. It is sad. But go to blindmike.net. We appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the show throughout the year. And make sure you tell a friend about it in the new year. Get early access and bonus content on Patreon or YouTube, or just support the show for free wherever you get podcasts. We appreciate you doing that. Go support Very Good Show as well. VeryGoodShow.org is where you can find all of Craig's links. If you're a Craigophile,
that's right,
and you want to support everything that Craig is doing, Rubbed Out and Very Good Show, go to VeryGoodShow.org. Check that out. And support our other friends of this program that help out. Go to HackRideTheDemon.com and support HackRide and DJ Electra. They help this show as well. So go to HackRideTheDemon.com, subscribe to DJ Electra Fry on YouTube, and have a Merry Christmas, everybody, and a Happy New Year. Well, we'll talk to you before the New Year, I think. But that's it. I'm rambling. Goodbye, everyone. We'll talk to you next time on Why Are You Laughing?
Zip it up and zip it out.